So imagine, many of you may not need to imagine this, but you are in or from a narcissistic family and you have a very narcissistic sibling who takes advantage of everyone. But that sibling is the golden child. And you also may even have a narcissistic parent. And there may also be many other people in your family system who are not narcissistic. But when the family gets together and it is so clear how dismissive your sibling is not only to you but to others, that other people in the family say, oh, come on now, that's just how he is. He just says these things. There's just a little bit of grumpiness. Other people in the family, for example, maybe your other parent who may not be as narcissistic, might keep giving your narcissistic sibling opportunities, letting them live rent-free in a home they own for over a year, or loaning them money, or even giving them a job. Or let's try this one. You are in a narcissistic relationship and your partner is a gaslighter, a betrayer, a jerk behind closed doors, but also has a job in your community where people admire them. And they're also quite generous in front of other people, helping them out when something breaks at their house, buying dinner when people go out, or giving people gifts and that kind of thing. Your partner, though, may be often quite inconsistent where stuff around your house or children are concerned. Sometimes they show up on time, sometimes they don't, sometimes they come to the school meeting, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll step in when you have to work late, sometimes they won't. And you literally cannot plan around them. So you live life in a state of ultra planning and hypervigilance and backup plans and exhaustion. Some mutual friends one day see you and you're verbally upset. You're sharing upset about this chaos and ask what's wrong. You say, I am losing my mind. I don't know how to plan around this person. I'm going to need to get paid help, but we can't afford it. I just can't count on my partner. And the friends say, oh, come on. Your partner can't help it. They don't mean it. I think they might have ADHD. They're just a big kid, but they're so good with the kids when they're with them. Later on, you come to find out that after you talk to your partner and to be more consistent and are saying that you'll get some extra help, things change. The kids are getting picked up on time, for example. But then you come to find out that things are changing because your partner's parents are stepping in, your in-laws. So this way your partner doesn't need to miss out on their workout time. Make sense? In a workplace, this may be the people who minimize the negative impact of your boss constantly changing deadlines, or their bad treatment of certain staff members, or unfair promotions. However, in this same workplace, there may be colleagues or management who keep promoting this narcissistic colleague or not making them face consequences for the things they do wrong or their problem behavior. In these stories I'm sharing with you, there are the minimizers and there are the enablers. And both are harmful, but in different ways. Lots of people ask me, Dr. Ramani, why do narcissistic people get away with so much? Why doesn't anything happen to them? And a lot of this is because of the minimizers and the enablers. These two groups of folks do different kinds of harm to people like you who are in narcissistic relationships. Taken together, both the minimizers and the enablers harm people in narcissistic relationships because they not only don't validate your experience, but they leave you unprotected. Not only are they not going to bear witness, they let you be harmed. The minimizers do more of their harm through what feels like kind of low-grade gaslighting. they minimize the narcissistic person's pattern of behavior. They're basically saying, oh, come on now, it's not a big deal, let it go. Minimizers do a variety of things. They excuse, they justify, they assume the narcissistic person doesn't mean it, so it isn't that bad. So basically, you can't be hurt if they didn't intend to hurt you. Minimizers also try to use softer language. They'll say things like, oh, they're just testing your boundaries, when in fact the narcissistic person is lying to your face, or that the narcissistic person is just being silly, or they'll say the whole thing's just silly, when in fact the narcissistic person has humiliated you in public and does so repeatedly. Words like silly or boundaries, or sometimes the minimizer will even try the diagnostic bait and switch. They'll say, oh, it seems like they have ADHD. It's their ADHD. They're all over the place. It's so hard for them to pay attention or be present. And you're thinking, oh, that's interesting, because they sure as hell put a lot of focus, effort, and attention to detail when it came to hiding their affair. The minimizers are sort of the observers and the commenters. At the core of it, the minimizers are either just straight up selfish, or they are what I call status quoers. And they just want to maintain the flow of the way things are, their worldview, the social order, or they just want to view the world and the people in it the way they want to view it. And in that worldview, the narcissistic person is just being a boundary tester. It's probably not hurting the minimizer, or maybe just a little immature, rather than seeing it clearly as someone whose behavior is chronic, harmful, abusive, and acceptable. Well, to see it that way doesn't work for the minimizer. Sometimes the minimizer is naive. Sometimes they are traditionalists, or culturally have perceptual blockages in seeing the situation clearly. Many, if not most, minimizers have not been directly harmed by the narcissistic relationship. Then there are the enablers. The enablers are the doers. They actively empower the narcissistic person. They loan them money. They lift any consequences. They give them a free pass or a second chance. They may bend the rules for them, even when they have the power to enforce those rules. Enablers will elect, vote for, or hire narcissistic people, even when they know what their behavior is about. Enablers can have their own power that they use to fuel the narcissistic person, or they may not have power, but they may keep doing things for the narcissistic person, like running all their errands for them or getting them out of a tough spot. Without enablers, narcissistic people would have a really tough go of it. So the enablers are in some ways the accomplices to the narcissistic abuse. When it comes to your experience as a survivor, it is quite possible that the enablers not only minimized, but their behavior actually was a sort of re-harm. They will invite them to events they should not be at that you now have to navigate. They will give the narcissistic person money or other resource so they can keep fighting you. Systems can enable. A narcissistic person, may violate something set by the court, and the court may literally say, well, this one time, let's let it pass. And that not only enables, it emboldens the behavior. When a narcissistic person does not face consequences for a problem behavior, they don't wipe their brow and say, oh my gosh, I got so lucky on that. I got to clean up my act. I have to be careful. I can't do this. Instead, they think, I'm special. Of course the rules don't apply to me. The enablers heighten the entitlement of the narcissistic person and embolden them. And for this reason, narcissistic people tend to exponentially escalate their behavior each time they get away with something, because they are not learning about consequences. They are just having their entitlement and their sense of invincibility strengthened. You want to stop a narcissistic person's behavior, put some heavy-ass consequences on them. The enablers are, as I said, the accomplices. They may not rob the bank, but they do drive the getaway car. They make the crime, or in the case of most relationships, the emotional abuse or the other abuse possible. A good way to remember this is to recognize that all enablers are also minimizers, but most minimizers are not enablers. The minimizers are the people on the side who look the other way and play it down. Oh, they don't mean it. But the minimizers tend not to be active players. For example, they don't have the power to give consequences, or they don't hand resources over to the narcissistic person, that kind of thing. The enablers are more likely than the minimizers to also be directly benefiting from the narcissistic person. They may get money, connections, privileges. They may get to soak up some of their narcissistic person's power. They may create favors that the enabler can call on in the future. Basically, the corrupt system that exists around the narcissistic person just magnifies the harm of the people caught up in it. This happens at societal levels too. I was reading a headline about a really bad thing that a world leader did, and the headline completely soft-pedaled what the world leader did, because what they did was really bad. And the headline made it sound like this world leader just had bad manners. But the news site wasn't enabling them. They were minimizing them. The news site couldn't place consequences on them. It was the other world leaders at the meeting and the government and judicial leaders in the home country of the world leader who were the enablers, because they were actively supporting this leader and ensuring that this leader faced no consequences for breaking some really big rules. The news site should be embarrassed. The enablers, however, are the ones who are behaving as badly as the narcissistic person. But most of us don't have lives that are in the headlines. We just have lives. And the harm of narcissistic abuse isn't just the abuse that happens in the relationship, but it is the lack of willingness of other people to validate our experience, to call a duck a duck. And it is also the harms created by people who continue to either reward the narcissistic person or not create consequences for the narcissistic person. This all results in a massive gaslight and a sense of helplessness for people who are going through these relationships, a real sense of a lack of justice, because they often see all sorts of support and meaning-making happening around the narcissistic person's behavior, but a sort of pity, if you're lucky, and not understanding why the other person going through the relationship is having such a difficult time. Narcissistic people, to do the sorts of things they do, need a sort of unethical, self-serving army behind them. If everyone around you was willing to cut off the air supply and hold the narcissistic person accountable, I'm still not sure it would completely stop their behavior, because narcissistic behavior is pretty unchangeable. But let me tell you this, it would definitely slow it down. Some of this is cultural. Patriarchal cultures, stratified cultures, honor-oriented cultures. For example, cultures in which destroying the person who is perceived to have brought shame on a family is permissible. These are all settings that are heavy in enablers and minimizers, because the investment in the status quo is greater than in protecting individuals in that system. And people don't want to give up the power they have, or they don't want there to be change because they're benefiting from the system as it is. The collateral damage of all of this is you. Minimizing and enabling are part of all narcissistic systems. And the more of it there is, the greater the harm of the abuse, because you are not only not protected, but the narcissistic person gets to keep doing what they do in an unchecked manner. All of it magnifies the sense of injustice that is so universal in these relationships as well. It's important to know the difference. Both are a problem, but it's the enablers that are, in essence, the air tank that fills the gigantic balloon of the narcissistic person's ego. Would that it would just float away. Thanks again.